Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to answer your April food plot questions. We're going to bring back Brad Harper, Harper Growing Solutions, as most of these questions are going to pertain to his liquid lime and liquid fertilizer products. So let's bring in Brad and answer your April food plot questions. We're again joined by Brad Harper. We're going to answer your April food plot questions. Again, most of them pertain to Brad's products with the line of Plot Doctor products. So first one, Brad. It's kind of a two-part question. Some folks asked how much Plot Doctor lime do they need per acre, and then the second one, how much is 1 gallon in relationship to pelletizer or egg lime?
Yeah, and that there's actually a chart on the back of the jug, so if that's something that you just want to take your own soil sample and buy the jug, you can figure that out on the chart on the back. Now, too, a lot of guys actually send me their soil samples, so that way we can kind of go over that, talk about a lot of different things, but get exactly. But the chart on the back of the jug is just an easy way in order to kind of skip the soil sample sending out or just to do it yourself. So that's really nice. And the 1 gallon on average, we're just comparing that to a ton. I mean, if you're looking at ag lime or pel lime and they say 2 tons an acre, you could convert that to gallons and be able to do that. You're probably going to be really close. It doesn't happen all the time that it's exactly that, but on average, that's what we're looking at.
Right. So there really isn't it's not really, I need a jug per acre. You actually, it'd be like if the soil test says you need 3 tons of lime, can you actually do 3 gallons and it would move the
It would be
needle?
very close.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not going to be exact, but it's going to be close. And that's where that chart on the back kind of comes into play. So you could look at your soil sample and what the recommendations are on that. Get the jug, kind of compare the two, and you'll be just fine.
So let's try to throw a hypothetical out there. Can't talk this morning. I've got 5.8 pH, and we're going to try to grow some brassicas.
Yep.
Probably looking at a gallon. Maybe
My first question would be, what's your CEC?
Okay, so you're looking at soil. Okay, that's a great point. I got sandy soil. You're going to probably want to add more.
Less.
Okay, less.
Yep.
All right. The heavier the soil, the more we're going to need because it hangs in the soil a lot longer.
Correct. And that's where that with ag and pel lime too. That's the same concept. So
Sure.
But yeah,
Okay.
if you're looking at if you got sandy soil, you're at a 5.8 1 gallon.
That'll definitely help move it.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Got this. A couple of folks asked, can I spray the Plot Doctor products on growing plants? This gentleman referenced the clover chicory blend. Now, the foliar fertilizer, is that something they can do?
Yes. So we call it a perennial maintenance program on the clover plus chicory seclusion blends. A lot of those perennials, we're doing a perennial maintenance program. So we're adding our lime, our Plot Doctor foliar, and our Plot Doctor calcium, and we're just going and spraying that.
Okay.
Probably mid-May-ish up here. Up by you, it's probably more towards 1st of June.
Sure.
But getting that on there at that time, and then we're doing it again probably mid to end of August, let's say. And that's kind of the spring. We're getting that nice and healthy to help make it through the summer droughts and the heat. And then in the fall, we're adding that just to help boost that, keep up with browse pressure, and really do a good job as far as pulling nutrients in, making sure that we can handle that fall.
Okay, so now you saw our food plots back here. I think yesterday we were 38 degrees. Today we're 42. Gotta love the UP weather. But it's not really, it's starting to grow. The rye's coming along good, but the perennials just are taking their time. Is it something I want to do right now because there's not a lot of growth, or is that something I want to wait until we really start to get that warm weather explosion?
Yeah, so I like to wait just because compared to granular, it's going to get right in the plant and we can go to work. So we don't need to put it out now in hopes that it's going to be there, in a month or something like that.
Sure.
We can go out, and that's why we want to wait.
Okay.
When that plant's actively growing, good out there, do that. The plant's going to take it in through the leaf really well. Plus, we're still going to get down to the soil and change that pH. So kind of that early mid-spring, we'll say. That's probably mid to late spring, and then the early fallish somewhere.
Okay. One thing, maybe this will be a two-part question on the back half of this, the liquid lime part. Now, you said we can run that in a combo. So right now, I don't have a lot of growth. Would now be a good time to drop the lime? or if we've got actively growing clovers, chicories, perennials, brassicas that we're not going to harm with the ATV, would you drop lime on those bigger plants that the whitetails are already consuming, or would you do it like now time frame when there's not a lot of growth?
I would still do it at the same time.
Okay.
For ease. Now, if that's something that you're going up and you just want to do something, you could put that out now, but that's something too. I would much rather wait till we're a little closer to season,
Sure.
just because we don't need to wait.
Okay.
But the one thing like with this, in which I know we always talk about, but as long as you're adding gallons per acre, not trying to get away with only spraying 5 gallons per acre.
Now this is water. This isn't 5 gallons of lime.
Correct.
This is 5 gallons of water.
5 gallons of solution. So if we can get up to the 20 or 25 gallons of solution per acre, then that's really going to help, because if we, not only are you going to have an issue with your pumps and your nozzles and trying to get that thick of stuff into a small amount of water that we're spraying, that you could run into some issues doing a foliar application with the lime at a lower rate. So if we're at 15, 20, or 25 gallons of solution per acre, then we're totally fine and we can do all that. Now, I know another guy had asked if kind of how we do our foliars, because we are running over everything. I don't really worry about if I'm running over, 2 tire tracks of brassicas over the course of 10, 12 feet. They normally bounce back really well.
As long as we're under that 6 to 8 inches.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
And
Yep.
I mean, too, I want to say I've done it when they're pretty tall. Now, you are going to, hurt the plants. But overall, if you're running 2 tire tracks and you might hurt a few of those plants throughout there over 10 or 12 feet, I mean, I kind of look at it like we're doing way more good than bad in that area. So that's something that, depending on what you're using to spray, if you're only covering, 3 or 4 feet, well, that's a little different story.
Sure.
Because you are running over a lot more.
Question we just got, and I'll kind of, my experience is if I find out that we went too late into the brassica growing season, we killed them or hurt them to where there's tire tracks, I'm just going to go drop rye or a fast growing brassica like a radish, just to try to fill the holes in.
Absolutely.
The other thing is that somebody asked about planting or spraying brassicas. I'll actually use a backpack sprayer. We were asked about a backpack sprayer, and I'd answered that, yeah, I just open the nozzle up more. That'd be the same thing as changing the Fimco nozzle. But yeah, I mean, I can do like a half acre with a couple of backpack sprayers, and I'll just walk through there if need be. I've done it. You get those brassicas about this tall, and I'll just do it with a backpack sprayer.
Correct.
Lot of work, but it's worth it.
And that's totally doable. And that's something that kind of somewhat calibrate that as far as fill that thing up, go see how much you can spray roughly, so we kind of can convert that to ounces.
Sure.
And it's not very much.
No.
And 2, with the brassicas especially, most of the time we're not going to be spraying when they're bigger, because we kind of want to get that on there earlier so we can do a better job growing. Because once they get to so big, we might be a little late as far as trying to correct a deficiency or really push that growth. So there's kind of that fine line of where we want to be putting that foliar on brassicas.
Okay, I'm going to skip this one because we'll come back to the shelf life question, but this is going to kind of tie into this whole conversation we're having right now. How many times per year can the foliar be sprayed?
Now, that comes down to, we can spray it as much as we want.
Sure.
It's not like we're doing any damage. It's just going to be, we don't need to spray it that much.
Okay.
So on a perennial, 2, maybe 3 times if you get a really hot and dry spell that we want to come in and try to help that out. But overall, on a perennial, we're probably only doing that twice. Brassicas, you're probably only doing 1 foliar. Corn and beans, we're only normally doing 1 foliar. And it's kind of, again, what are you spraying with? What are we going to do, or when are we going to do the least amount of damage? So as far as how many times, that doesn't matter. It's just we're not going to spray more than just a couple because we don't need to.
Okay.
Now,
I would think it'd also depend on how bad the soil test is.
Yeah.
Okay.
But 2, because we can do a lot with a little. Our rates are super small, so if you do have really bad dirt, or you got maybe some brassicas that were planted a little too thick and a little too heavy, that are all purple and yellow, well, maybe we'll just bump that rate up a little bit, but you don't need to get in there as much as you would think.
I would think one of the things, though, like when we design a food plot program for somebody, even with the foliar, in the liquids. I'm still not going to push the envelope if they've got a low CEC, low organic matter, low pH. We're still looking at cereal grains, maybe buckwheat, that kind of thing. I'm not going to push the issue with brassicas and then try to drag them along with liquid fertilizer. I mean, there's just some instances I'm just not even going to go with brassicas. We're going to still try to build that OM, that organic matter up with cereal grains and like our soil builder, and then our fall forage sandy in the fall. We're still going to do that. I'm not going to recommend, even though we can get that fertilizer in the ground, we're still not going to do that. So.
Correct, and that's where too. I mean, we're doing foliars on everything. So even if it's just rye,
Yep.
because where it's just rye, it's probably because the dirt's that bad.
Sure.
So we're still going to try to come in and do a little bit of a foliar. And I mean, yeah, I could say I want you to spray that 100 times, but that's a complete waste of money. So
Kind of
it's
like
just a matter
eating
of
20 vitamin C's every day. You're only going to use 2 of them.
Yep, exactly.
Yep, sure.
So
All right, so then we'll go back to this question, Brad. The shelf life of the lime, the shelf life of the foiler. Now, we've got some out here that came here last year that's still on the shelf. What's that situation?
So I treat it just like all my other chemicals, all your herbicides and everything else. Don't let them freeze. That's just the best way to do it. Then you won't have any issues. Now the calcium and the lime are incredibly thick. So if you run down in the basement, maybe give them a couple shakes throughout the winter, you know, maybe once a month, that would really help. But 2, there's not necessarily a need for that. It's going to help you, but you don't have to. So just get them inside. Don't let them freeze. Give them a shake or 2 throughout the winter, and that'll be totally fine.
Great.
Now, for the most part, I'm assuming that most guys aren't going to be overwintering twice. You know, that might be something you buy a little bit extra one year, use it up the following, but I don't really have a good answer for if you're trying to buy a bunch and overwintering it twice, because then that's a long time.
Here's a tip. If you got any left over, her flower garden.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
All right. So the last question, and we'll talk about the Fimco. There's a lot of different sprayers out there, but it's probably all the same Chinese-made stuff. Fimco nozzle size for the lime, and then the fertilizer.
And that's a really good question, and we can kind of cover that now, but we'll go way more in depth when we do the calibration video, because that's going to depend more so on how much ground you're trying to cover or what's your average food plot size, because we can change this depending on a lot of those variables. Now, most of the time we're looking at a minimum of a 0.3 nozzle, and
For the lime?
For both.
For both.
Yep.
Okay. Are we going to use the same now? Because we're not misting and we're dumping it onto the ground, so it's going to be the same. Okay.
Correct. And
So
then
we'll go-
2, I wouldn't even change them out if I'm spraying herbicide.
Okay.
I would switch to at least an 0.3 or
All right.
bigger. An 0.4 is great, 0.5 is great, but 0.3 is kind of the smallest. I really like that 0.3 and bigger. So depending on your food plot size and everything else, that's where that comes into play. Obviously, if you got a bigger nozzle, you're going to use more water. So we can kind of get into a lot of details on that in that calibration video. But if we just start and go with the 0.3, normally most of those sprayers, they come with a yellow tip. It's a 0.1 or it's a super small, like you say, it's just misting.
And you think that might be too small for even like glyphosate,
I don't like
simazine?
it.
I know simazine's really thick. It's almost like the lime. It's
Correct.
not quite as thick.
Yep.
But simazine, you got to bump that nozzle size up.
Correct.
Yep.
And with them 0.1s, even with Roundup or Gly, you have a whole lot better chance of drift in killing stuff you don't want just because it's misting. So
Sure.
if it's a little windy at all, you know, you're driving and that stuff's misting. It's
Yeah,
just
I've
not
seen
even
it.
hitting what you want to spray.
Killed some screen that way. Yep.
So if you switch to that 0.3 nozzle, I mean, they sell them at Tractor Supply, Family Farm and Home. You can get them right off Amazon. The only thing you got to do is just check exactly what type your tip is, and you can match that up on the computer and switch that to at least an 0.3.
Now, you talked about when we're doing the spraying, you think those filters need to come out.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
like to, even with simazine as well, I
Okay.
would pull them filters, pull them screens. You're going to have less issue, and that comes down to mixing as well. You know,
Sure.
we put some water in the tank, get that agitating. We're mixing simazine, the lime, the foliar, all the Plot Doctor products in a bucket, mixing it with a paint drill or a paint mixer, and then we dump it in while that tank's already agitating. That way that gets mixed really well, stays in solution and in suspension, and then we're able to just get it right out through that bigger nozzle, and then therefore we don't have to worry about plugging the filter or screens, and we don't have to worry about plugging the nozzle once we switch to a bigger one.
That paint stir, that's a good point, because I have used it now for 2 years and I've not used one of those. I'm buying one soon. You can't shake your way
No.
to getting everything out of that can. You can't, I'm just going to shake, I'm going to dump it out and keep, no, it doesn't work that way. This is some really thick stuff. Get yourself some sort of a pneumatic or electric paint stir. It's going to help a lot. Even with the Simazine.
Correct.
It helps.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, you can go to any hardware store, $3, $5, $6, and throw that on your electric drill, cordless drill, and just mix it really quick. You don't have to hit it for very long, but I mean, anything will be better than not doing that.
And then run your agitator
Yep.
on your tank on and off.
Correct.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw, let's just say in a 25-gallon tank, I'll throw 10 gallons in there, maybe 5, just something to start that agitation and keep that water moving. And then as I'm pouring my bucket in, now I might have 14, I'll go mix the foliar, do the same thing, hit that with a paint mixer, dump that in, and the whole time your tank's mixing, and then I'll drive out to the plot. As soon as I'm ready to spray is when I'll start adjusting that agitation and then go spray. So you can leave that going the whole time, and that's only going to help as well.
Is there a certain pressure we're looking for?
That's where we'll cover that.
We'll have to
in
work
the
on that in that
calibration,
video, okay,
because depending on where you want to be, that's what's so nice that we can completely customize how many gallons per acre you're spraying by playing with that agitation and playing with that pressure.
Okay.
There's a lot of wiggle room.
Sure. Okay. Last question. Actually, there's 2 more that it just kind of popped in my head. Can these be sprayed with Roundup at the same time? Obviously, we wouldn't be doing the foiler, or would we? I'm not sure.
You can.
Okay.
But what I like to do, you're killing stuff with Roundup or Gly or herbicides. We're growing stuff with this. I like to just keep them separate because then there's less issues. You can, but I don't like to. Personally.
Okay. What about even just the lime?
You can, but I don't like to.
Okay.
Personally.
So it can be done, but it's not recommended. Okay. And then the last one, I think you just answered the question online. Gentleman wrote in and said, I'm doing this, I'm going to use the Plot Doctor, but my pH is really low, 5.2, 5.3, I can't remember. Can I still do a 2-ton application of lime and then come back with the Plot Doctor?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, if you're in the 4s, that's totally fine. We can add Pel lime, we can add egg lime.
Yeah.
Start that creep of adjusting that pH and getting that raising. But in the meantime, we can supplement with the liquid.
Right.
That way we can change the pH really quick and then let that egg lime or Pel lime kick in down the road.
Yeah.
That's totally fine.
I think on that ground that you were on this winter, we're going to be doing that because it's so bad.
Yeah.
It's so bad. So we got to move it a lot. The Plot Doctor will help supplement during the growing season, but to really move that number, we're going to do some of the Pel lime as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you got a couple of products that are in the works.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can talk about?
We're kind of going to keep that under wraps right now. I know we kind of did a little teasy the other day, talking about something that we've been playing with on the screen, and then another product we've been playing with just as a soil applied. So a couple new ones, we're working on it. Hopefully they'll be out soon, but yeah, that's about where we're at.
There's one we did not talk about, your deer detour. If you folks you're trying to grow soybeans, I know the big thing right now is the electric fence, and you've got a product, it smells pretty bad.
It's very strong, and that's something that, depending where you're at, if you have a 1/4 acre plot and you're trying to grow brassicas or soybeans and it's in the middle of the woods, it's probably not going to work.
Right.
But we've had a lot of success in a lot of different areas that if there's any other food source nearby, it really does a good job. And when you look at how much a fence costs compared to the detour, at the end of the day, I mean, we can spray a lot of detour for the cost of a fence. Plus, you don't have to go in there, put it up, take it down. It's been really successful overall. But that's something that just to kind of keep in mind, because depending on how much food is around you, that really determines how that product works.
Right.
We've had some big epic failures, and that's just, it is what it is, depending on what's around and your deer densities, that we can do a really good job in a lot of spots.
Okay. Well, I hope you all got your questions answered. If you have any more questions, comments below. We can have a conversation. We can get those on the May food plot questions. But I want to thank Brad for coming up here. Folks, he's heading back home with I can look out the window and see it. There's a U-Haul truck loaded with Northwoods Whitetails products. So go find Brad if you're north of Grand Rapids. He's all set. So thanks for watching, folks, and we'll see you in a few days.